It's strange that we've gotten used to flying. So many of us travel across state lines or even across oceans on a regular basis. At any given moment, there are between 8,000 and 13,000 planes in the air across the world. It has become a regular part of modern life. But it started with a radical dream. The Wright brothers dared to imagine a world where people could fly. Imagine how crazy that sounded to the others around them. And imagine how crazy they themselves felt after every failed prototype. But they didn't give up. They adapted their planes to reality, but they never stopped dreaming of the world we take for granted today, where flying is normal. Entrepreneurs have that same special gift to imagine new possibilities that others can't see. But all of us face pushback. Wilbur Wright even confessed that after a series of failures, he told his brother that people would not fly for another 50 years. That was just 2 years before their first successful flight. Idealism is an important starting point. We have to imagine new possibilities, but at some point, we also have to adapt to the realities around us. In this episode, Peter will talk about how the end of idealism is actually a good thing, as he helps us discover how we continue pushing forward when it feels impossible, maybe even foolish, to do so. Let's watch.
So the question is, how do we hold on to hope when our service, when our work gets exceptionally difficult? And I believe this is a moment that we have so much to learn from the global church. Our brothers and sisters around the world are not new to difficult circumstances. And so we started having questions that I'd never asked before, but I started having conversations with individuals that I know and respect that have made the decision to continue serving. And I asked a simple question: what is it that sustains your service? What keeps you there? What keeps you in a place of service? And we started having conversations, and the geography was different. It was around the world. The sector was different, a variety of sectors, from education to economic reform. And yet the journey was a consistent journey. It was a journey that started with an element of idealism. And some people would say, those youthful idealists, in some sort of a dismissive way, but I would never do that. There is honor and respect for those individuals that see that there's something wrong in the world and have the courage to do something about it. So many of the great movements are created by individuals that say there's a problem, yes, but let's do something about it. But the challenge is that our idealism is ultimately an imaginative vision of guaranteed success. Our idealism is confronted by the reality of service. And there are some days, as my friend John said in South Asia, when it feels like everything goes wrong. And it's in those moments when our idealism is confronted by real challenges that for many of us, we hit seasons of discouragement or even disillusionment. This moment when we start to say, is it worth it? Can I keep going? How do I reframe my service? But I've come to realize that disillusionment is not a bad thing, that our disillusionment actually can be a gift if we use it to say, let's re-explore the foundation of our service. And so in these moments of disillusionment, Barbara Brown Taylor, she says this, she said, disillusionment, when you take the word apart, it is disillusionment, the loss of illusion, the end of make-believe. Is that a bad thing? And I would say it is not a bad thing unless seasons of disillusionment cause us to go inward. I believe that when we turn inward, we turn towards cynicism, and in our world, cynicism is on the rise. George Carlin says this, he says, scratch any cynic and you will find a disappointed idealist. He said, at its core, when you are disappointed in your idealism, your vision of what might be, he said that leads to cynicism. And cynicism is corrosive. Cynicism is when we get off of the dance floor, retreat to the balcony, and mock those that are still trying to make an impact. Cynicism is on the rise, and cynicism is corrosive to individuals and to organizations. Cynicism at its core says, God, what you have called us to is impossible. But in those moments, the question is, where is hope? And I believe we have in our culture, we have this idea that somehow that the sun is going to come out. We have this belief that the sun is going to come out tomorrow. We have this idea that if we just try hard enough, we will be able to solve all of our problems. But for those that engage in a lifetime of service, we know that there are moments when we come to the end of our abilities. If we're trying to have a lifetime of service, there are going to be those moments when we reach the end of our abilities, and I believe that is not a bad thing if it causes us to look not just to a false imagination of the sun is going to come out tomorrow, but it drives us to our knees. And it drives us to a God that says, I am with you in the midst of pain. I will be with you in the midst of your most difficult moments. And I believe that gift of presence is way better than any false hope of the sun coming out tomorrow. As we started having conversations with global leaders who had persevered the seemingly unendurable, we found that they again and again were on this journey from idealism to disillusionment. But then instead of turning inward, they found a way to turn upward, and they kept pointing to a curious Old Testament prophet named Jeremiah that we want to explore next.
As entrepreneurs, God has called each of us to work for his glory. But the brokenness of the world can make this seem like a losing battle. Work was a fundamentally good part of Eden, but toil is a fundamental part of the world after the fall. We have to balance these two realities today. God has called us to good work, and that work will be done in a fractured, imperfect world. We will face setbacks. We can't believe the illusion that everything will work out the way it did in the garden. And in that sense, disillusionment can be helpful. It reminds us of the real world we're operating in and helps us create solutions that work within those structures. The Wright brothers weren't the first people to dream of flying, but they were the first to make flight possible in the real world. It took many tries and failures. They likely felt disillusioned at times, but their persistence, despite those challenges, has served billions of people since then. How can you reframe your setbacks in a way that keeps you motivated to serve others with your business? How can you see disillusionment as a gift? Talk about this session in your group and how it relates to the journey you're on. Open yourselves up to learning from one another. Be transparent and honest with each other. What you get out of this time together will only be as enriching and life-giving as what you put into it. See you next time.